Do you think that we can all be strong, brave, and persistent? I do. Today we'll talk about some people who can inspire us to do that.
When I have a worry-filled mind, I like to wander outside. No telling what we might find. Birds calling, worms crawling, leaves falling down from above. Oh, I plant my feet on the ground. I keep my head in the clouds. I let my feelings out loud. I hear joy calling, fear crawling, tears falling down out of love.
Hi friends, this is A here. Thank you for joining me today. Before we get started with our lesson, I'd like to take some time for us to identify our feelings or emotions. Us humans experience lots of different feelings throughout the day. Sometimes our feelings are easy for us to identify. We know when we're eating ice cream we feel happy. But sometimes our feelings are a little bit trickier or harder for us to identify. Maybe a friend has done something and we're not sure how we feel about it. So it's important that we practice identifying our feelings, listening for the messages our bodies are sending us, thinking about how our brain is reacting and how our body is responding, maybe if we feel tense or if we feel calm. And so I like to practice identifying our feelings together so we can build that muscle and get more comfortable with it anytime our feelings change. So I have a poster here that I've made for you, and you can look carefully at all the different faces and all the different features, the eyes, the eyebrows, the mouth, and see which feeling matches the feeling you're experiencing right now. It's good to practice saying or sharing the feeling that you're experiencing in the moment, not only so other people around you can understand and get to know you better, but so your brain and body can actually feel a little more comfortable in itself. So let's look right now at that poster. Notice the different ways the eyes are tilted or squinting. Notice the different ways the eyebrows are shaped. Some of the heads are tilted in different directions. Some of the mouths are wide or squiggly, making a smile or a frown. Go ahead and see if you can identify the feeling you're feeling right now. I'll do the same. I'll give you some time here, and then we can share together. Have you found your feeling? Wonderful, me too. I am feeling so grateful. Grateful that you've decided to join me today. Grateful for all the friends and families that I've been able to connect with and learn from and share with. And so I'm feeling really grateful right now. What feeling are you feeling? What emotion are you experiencing? Thank you so much for sharing. If you'd like to continue to practice with this poster, you can always visit my Patreon. And for a donation as little as $1, you can get this poster to download and keep forever and ever, so you can practice identifying your feelings every time you experience them. Now, if you visited with me before, you know that we also talk about different ways we can help manage our feelings. Sometimes when we're feeling really overwhelmed or really slow moving, we can try some things to help us feel a little more comfortable or focused or at peace. And one of those things is exercising. Now, there are so many different ways to exercise, but when we visit together, I try to give you a couple different options, and Fig always suggests one as well. And we use our date to help us, although the date for me may be different than the date for you. But it's a nice, simple way for us to be able to think, I need to exercise, and I can do this many, just to get our bodies moving and to help us maybe manage those feelings we're experiencing. So the date that I have here is 3/9/22. And for me, it is March 9th, 2022. Like I said, for you it may be different. That's okay. You can always add exercises or change the numbers as needed. But Fig is showing us the move we'll do in a little bit. And I always like to give us a moment to observe or notice what shapes they're making with their body so we can guess. Use some of our brain power or critical thinking skills to help us. What do you think they're showing? We'll do their move really soon. But for now, we're going to start with 3 knee-ups. And you can do knee-ups while sitting if you'd like, or standing. And all you need to do is try to bring your knee up to match your hand. And your hand should be somewhere around your shoulder height, maybe a little higher or lower, depending on what's comfortable. And we're just going to do 3 of these. So we'll count by ones, since 3 is an odd number. Let's do 3 knee-ups. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Now we have 9 moves to do, and this is where Fig comes in. Fig, what should we do 9 of? Did your friends guess? Jumping jacks. Yes. Oh, thanks, Fig. Okay, we are going to do 9 jumping jacks. And again, because 9 is an odd number, we're going to count by ones. You may be wondering, why do I keep saying if numbers are odd or even? It's because oftentimes when we see an even number, we count by 2s. Another way to help us grow our brains and practice thinking in a new way. But for now, we're going to count by ones and do 9 jumping jacks. Ready? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Nice work. And finally, we have 22 moves to do. And I thought we could really work ourselves out and try to raise our heartbeats and warm our bodies up well by running in place. But before we do, 22 ends in an even number. So we're going to practice counting by 2s like I mentioned. And if you're not sure how to count by 2s yet, that's okay. You can listen and follow along as I do. But when we count by 2s, we do not say the odd numbers. So we won't say 1, but we will say 2. We won't say 3. We will say 4, 6, 8, 10, and so on. So let's give it a try, counting by 2s as we run in place all the way up to 22. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. Nice work. Now, in order to cool back down and lower our heart rate once more, we're going to take 3 big breaths. All you have to do is listen for a bell. When you hear it, you can breathe in and fill your belly big, and then slowly breathe out. Let's breathe together. Wonderful job. All of the different things we just tried, all of the different exercises and breathing techniques are all tools or strategies that you can use anytime if you need help moving from a zone to a different zone or managing your feelings if you're feeling overwhelmed or tired or low energy or high energy. So give them a try anytime you need to. At the beginning of this episode, I asked about if you thought we could be strong and brave and persistent. And today we're going to talk about some super stellar people who have been strong and brave and persistent, even though life had been really difficult or challenging, or thrown some really big or hard things their way. So let's look at our message and then we'll read some books together. In my message, you may know there are often alliterations and onomatopoeias hidden. If you're not sure what an alliteration or an onomatopoeia is, go ahead and check out my episode from earlier in the week to learn more about that. Dear brave and bold kids, have you ever faced a challenge? A time when something felt very difficult, sad, or hard to accomplish? Challenges and struggles are a natural part of life, but how we face them can really help us learn and grow. For example, Maya Angelou, a famous poet and writer, once said, "We may encounter many defeats, but we must not be defeated." Each day, we may face hard times or challenges, but we can handle them. We can try to work through them, step away for a break, ask for help, or take time to tackle them head on. Today, we're going to read about some incredibly inspiring women in history, past and present, who have faced challenges and kept going. Amazing. Love, Mrs. A. Have you ever faced a challenge? Something that was difficult or hard to do? Yeah, me too. Lots of us experience lots of different types of challenges. Sometimes, just day to day, we can experience challenges when we're learning or trying something new. Other times, there could be big events or big things that happen in our life that could be really challenging or hard to work through or figure out. And so, when we talk about being brave and being bold and being persistent, please know that there are so many different things that can happen in our lives and so many different things we can all experience. And that's why I talked about lots of different ways we could go about getting through those big challenges. Sometimes, like when we are learning a new word or reading a story that's challenging or difficult, we can work through it. We can practice, we can take our time, right? Other times, we might really need to ask for help and get the knowledge or the ideas from others, and even collaborate or work together with other people. And sometimes it's such a big challenge or something's really overwhelming that we just need to take a break or step away. And so it's important to remember there's no one right way to face a challenge. Trying to keep going is really important. Maybe really making an effort to do your best and not give up, ask for help, or take a pause is going to help us. Being persistent and strong and brave doesn't mean not stopping to take a rest or taking a breath, but it does mean not just quitting because it's not easy. And so we're going to hear about 3 women who have faced several big challenges in their lives, and we're going to learn a little bit about how they persisted and what helped them continue on in the face of these difficult times. And so the first woman we're going to hear about is Malala Yousafzai. And this is a Little People, Big Dreams book. And I've shared one of these earlier in the month because I really love not only the illustrations, but the way it introduces us to all of these peoples and the types of biographies that are written here. I think they're really great introductions. If we haven't heard of a person before, or we just want to know a little bit about them. And so this book, Little People, Big Dreams, is all about Malala Yousafzai. And it's written by Maria Isabel Sanchez Viguera, illustrations by Manuel Mirza. And we'll just read a few pages together. But Malala is someone who has faced some really big challenges and difficulties in her life. And if you don't already know about her, even after we read these few pages, you should definitely grab this book and get to know her and her story a bit more. In the beautiful Swat Valley in Pakistan lived a Muslim girl called Malala. Her home was humble, and so was the school for girls her father ran. Malala couldn't wait to grow up, attend class, and discover all her talents. But Malala's dream became a nightmare when a violent group called the Taliban took control of her valley. They banned most of the things that she liked, from listening to music, taking photographs, and even flying kites. So a big challenge that Malala has faced in her life was when a group of people who are really unkind and dangerous took over her village, and they said, "You can't listen to music. You can't fly kites. You can't take photographs." And these are a lot of the things that Malala liked. And so this was a really difficult thing for her to experience. She wasn't allowed to learn or play in the ways that she had before. Maybe the Taliban had bombs and guns, but Malala and her friends had books and pens to fight back with. They decided to raise their voices and speak up about how important it was for their future to attend school. And so even though this group of people, the Taliban, was telling Malala and all of the people in the village that girls couldn't do these things, they couldn't attend school, they couldn't read, they couldn't learn, Malala spoke up and she said, "We need to do these things. Everybody should be able to learn and play and read and write." And so she was really brave. And unfortunately, because of how outspoken she was and how she worked so hard to help people have a voice and get an education, the Taliban actually wanted to harm her. And they did end up hurting her pretty badly, but thankfully, Malala survived and continues to do some incredible work encouraging governments around the world to make sure that everyone has equal rights and equal access to learn and to grow. And so Malala is working today doing really important things. And so grab this book or any book about Malala and learn more about her and her story. She is incredibly brave and she is incredibly strong and persistent. Now, the next person I wanted to share with you is Helen Keller. And maybe you've heard of Helen Keller before. This book is called I Am Helen Keller, and it's by Brad Metzler with illustrations by Christopher Eliopoulos. And Helen Keller has a really interesting and inspiring story. It's quite different than Malala's. Let's listen to a little bit of it. When I was little, I was just like you. I loved to play, I loved my dog, and I loved seeing all the bright, beautiful flowers. I also loved copying people. At 6 months old, I could already say, "Howdy, how do you do? Tea, tea, tea." Did she just ask for tea? How did she do that? What can I say? There's no stopping her. On the day I turned 1, I started walking. Oh, and there was another word I always loved. Wah wah. Here's your water. Just like any other kid, right? But there's one thing that made me different. When I was 19 months old, I got very sick. The doctor said I wouldn't live, but I did live. But the sickness made me blind and deaf. And so the first few months of Helen Keller's life were pretty typical. Maybe like yours, maybe like mine. She learned to walk and talk. And then a little after her first birthday, she got really sick. And the doctors thought that she wouldn't survive, but she did. However, after her sickness, she became blind and deaf. When someone is blind, it means that they cannot see. When someone is deaf, it means they cannot hear. There are different levels of blindness and deafness. Some people are partially blind where they can see a little bit or maybe out of one eye. And some people are partially deaf where they can hear a little bit, maybe out of one ear. But Helen Keller was completely blind and deaf after her sickness. I know it seems scary. It was scary for me too. Back then, people didn't know how to deal with someone who was deaf and blind. My relatives thought I was a monster. "You see the way she behaves? She put her hand in my plate. She ate my food. She's trying to find her water. Wah, 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 wah. She threw the silverware too. She's so poorly behaved. She shouldn't even be here." They were right. I wasn't very well behaved, but it's because I was extremely frustrated. In my dark world, I couldn't tell if anyone noticed me or cared about me. I couldn't see or hear what I was doing. Have you ever felt so frustrated that maybe you felt out of control, or you were acting in a way that someone said, "That's not right. Oh, you're being so misbehaved or not doing a good job." And really, Helen Keller is saying, I wasn't trying to be unkind or misbehaved. I was just really frustrated. I was so scared because I couldn't hear or see, and I didn't know if people even cared about me anymore. But by the time I was 5 years old, Helen says, I figured out small ways to communicate. To say yes, I nodded my head. To say no, I shook from side to side. To say father, I motioned to put on his glasses. To say mother, I rested my hands on my face. For my baby sister, I sucked on my thumb. And then I'd shiver like I was cold, but it really meant, Helen wants some ice cream. So although Helen was really young and really scared and confused and frustrated, she learned to communicate, and she learned to talk to people in a way that worked for her. Does this remind you of any other form of communication we've talked about? Me too. I'm showing you some American Sign Language. American Sign Language is a way that many people who are deaf or hard of hearing communicate in America. And it looks like Helen made up many of her own signs and ways of communication. Now we are going to skip quite a bit of Helen's story, and we're going to talk about some of the big things that she did. But when you grab this book and read it for yourself, you'll get to learn about the specific challenges that Helen overcame and the way that she worked with a really important teacher named Anne so she could learn and read. I became the first deaf and blind person to earn a college degree. I wouldn't be the last. As I grew older, I wrote 12 books and visited 34 countries. But the most important thing I did was to make sure that other people with disabilities could get the same education I had. There she is! She's so strong! Today, thousands of deaf and blind students enroll in universities thanks to the work that Helen did. Riding a horse? How does she do that? Helen says, my family had the money to hire a private teacher, but not everyone is that lucky. We need to give every person an equal chance. So Helen was able to overcome her challenges by the help of a lot of people in her life, her teacher, her family. And so she said, I know that I was lucky to have all of that support. And her work was to ensure that people who maybe didn't have a lot of money or didn't have all of those helpful family members could still get an education that they deserved, just like Malala and her work. This was only the beginning. I didn't just help the deaf and the blind. I started fighting for social change, to help women vote, to help the poor survive, and to help the people who needed it most. She was one of the earliest supporters of the ACLU to fight for free speech. She was also one of the first supporters of the NAACP to help Black people ensure equal rights. She met every president from Grover Cleveland to Lyndon Johnson, but let's be honest, they really got to meet her. Today, the American Foundation for the Blind and the Helen Keller International continue to help the blind and the hungry. And so, as I mentioned, we skipped a whole bunch about Helen Keller's life and about the challenges and obstacles that she faced and overcame. But I wanted to give you a big idea about some of the things Helen Keller did and how impactful and important her work was. So grab this book, I Am Helen Keller, and read all about her story and all of the details and all of the experiences that she had and continued to overcome even when they were challenging or difficult for her. And finally, we have this book called Frida Kahlo and her Animalitos. And Animalitos means little animals in Spanish. And this book is written by Monica Brown with illustrations by John Para. And I love Frida Kahlo because I feel really connected to her in ways. She was an artist and loved to create. And she loved to surround herself by plants and animals and things from nature. And I do too. Maybe you do as well. But I wanted to share a little bit about Frida's story because last week we talked about so many women who have helped protect nature and were involved in working with animals or helping their communities stay clean and free of pollution. And I thought Frida Kahlo was another incredibly inspiring woman who was connected to nature and creating and helping to take care of her community. And so this book talks about all of Frida's animalitos, or small animals, and how they inspired her and were kind of connected to her in different ways. And it also tells about her life story and some of the big challenges and struggles she had to overcome. So be sure to grab your own copy from the library or bookstore. Remember, you can always grab a copy from the link in the description of my video, and you can get it actually from your own local bookstore, even though it's a link that I've shared. So that's pretty cool. Frida had a parrot named Bonito. Like her parrot, Frida was colorful. She liked to wear bold shades that celebrated indigenous Mexico and her own heritage. She lived in a house the color of a parrot's bright blue feather, La Casa Azul, where she grew up with her mom, dad, and sisters. And what do you think La Casa Azul means? What color do you think is in there? Blue. La Casa means the house, and Azul means blue. So La Casa Azul, the blue house. And Frida grew up in La Casa Azul with her mom, dad, and sisters. Frida had a pet fawn named Granizo. Like her fawn, Frida had watchful, beautiful eyes. When Frida closed her eyes, she remembered her life as a little girl. Frida was always with her father, a photographer who taught her to look at the world through curious eyes. Frida and her father would walk to the park to collect bugs and look at them under a microscope. Frida's father also taught her how to paint finishing touches on his photographs. Frida loved the small brushes and the beautiful colors. Hearing about Frida and the work she did with her father makes me think about the story we read last week about Rachel Carson and how she liked to look under a microscope and notice all of the small parts in nature. Do you like to study or observe parts of nature? Me too. Frida had a cat with black, shiny fur, the same color as her long, dark hair. Like a cat, Frida was playful. But as a child, Frida couldn't always play. When Frida was 6, she got very sick. She was in bed for a long time. But little Frida didn't get sad or bored. Instead, she used her breath to make mist on her window, and then she drew a door with her finger. Frida uses her big imagination and curious eyes to walk out the door with a magic friend, a little girl who danced and played like a kitten. So although Frida was sick and stuck in bed, she used her imagination to create other people and characters and worlds on her windows. Have you ever used your imagination or your creativity when you were facing a challenge or an obstacle or a difficult time? Sometimes if I feel really sad or really frustrated or overwhelmed, if I draw or paint or make something with my hands like building, I often start to feel a little happier or a little more peaceful. Maybe you do too. Now there are so many other animalitos in this story, little animals that you can meet along with Frida as you hear more about her life. So go ahead and grab your own copy of Frida Kahlo and her Animalitos to continue to learn about her story, all that she overcame and all that she did. Now, my brave and bold friends, I have one more job for you, and it is to take a mindful moment with me. And it will be a breathing mindful moment, where we are going to start by either closing our eyes or lowering our head and putting our hands together right in front of our heart. And we are going to pretend that our hands are a rocket ship. And we are going to shoot our rocket ship off into space as we breathe in, and then slowly bring it back down to our heart as we breathe out. And being brave, like I said, can mean a lot of things. Being persistent and not giving up, taking a break or stepping away, asking for help or trying again. And when we think about rocket ships and astronauts and scientists, they all have to be brave and strong and persistent. They all need to take breaks and rest. They need to ask for help and keep trying. And so hopefully this mindful moment will help you connect or remember or feel inspired by all of these brave and persistent people we're learning about. Let's go ahead and get our rocket ships ready to take off. We'll do this for 5 breaths. 2 more. Friends, thank you for trying that rocket ship breath. What did you notice about your body or your mind as you were breathing? Yeah, maybe you noticed my eyes were following the rocket ship, even though I said maybe we can close them or lower our heads. My body didn't feel like doing that. It felt like looking at the rocket ship and using my imagination. Maybe that happened to you too. What's amazing about mindfulness is there's no one way to do it. There's no right or wrong way for us to try it. There are just different strategies or tools or ways we can try it and figure out which work best for our brain and body, which help us feel settled or clear headed or peaceful or calm. And so, however it works for you, I'm glad you gave it a try. If that one didn't connect with you or you felt like it wasn't a good fit, you can always check out my other videos and see which mindfulness activities or mindful moments do feel good for your brain and body. So be sure to like and subscribe so you know when I put out some new ones. And thank you so much for visiting with me today. I want to send you off with some love if you'd like it, a hug if you want it. And I can't wait to see you next time.